Hey YouTube, what's up? This is Steven, and welcome back. Alright, Procter and Gamble, what's good? Alright, man. Alright, I really want to get into this. Alright. But before I get into this, I just want to give a quick shout out to YouTube user Jane St. Clair for letting me know about this. She sent me a link to the video, and just want to give a shout out and a thanks to you, Miss Jane St. Clair, YouTube user. All right. Okay. I really don't know where to begin, but I guess I'll begin with the commercial. I guess that would be a good place to begin. All right. So Procter and Gamble has decided to sort of, kind of, not really like address some issues, because you notice in that commercial it wasn't anything, like, it was more so hinted at for the most part. The only thing I really noticed that was really blatant out there, just put it out there, let's see, was you are the whole, like, you're beautiful for a black girl thing. Like, the other portions of the commercial seem to be more so hinted at. They never went specifically into them, right? Like the police brutality thing, they didn't really go into that much. It's just kind of like hinted at it, like, oh, hint, hint. Like, if you get pulled over, you may not come home. Or like, hint, hint. Have your ID on you. You know, but they never really like specify. These they never, as far as like the dialogue in the commercial, it was never really specified. Like, oh, you know, baby, please be careful. These cops out here, you know, sometimes they look at, a young man like you and, you know, have a negative image and mindset when they see you. Like, they never really went into it like that, right? Um, but let me really just get into this. All right. So the commercial again. The commercial seems to have kind of. It's like it kind of goes almost. If you look at it, each section of the commercial, it seems to kind of like work its way up from maybe like the 50s or 60s to the present. If you really look at it, because you notice like the one black lady kind of looked like she was from the 70s with like the afro, and then the mom and the daughter in the car kind of look more so present day, while the young black girl and her mom, who like some storekeeper told her she was pretty for a black girl, they kind of look like the 50s 60s type of thing you know So if you kind of look at it, it does kind of seem to sort of kind of work its way up through like decades. If you kind of look at it, it seems to have that sort of a feel with it, sort of, right? All right. Also, something that was very important, you notice that there were no black men in the commercial, right? No black fathers in the commercial. I think I may have seen one black father, but he didn't have a speaking role. So already we're sort of kind of like low key pushing a stereotype that black fathers just aren't there, right? How the media loves to push that narrative, right? Like these dysfunctional, broken up black families. The father's not there. The mom has to do it all on her own. Super independent black woman, right? They love to push that narrative, right? So kind of like strike one against Procter and Gamble, right? Strike one. All right. The strike two would have been like them not really being specific enough in this commercial, right? They're not really like, it's too vague. It's too much like hint, hint, nudge, nudge versus, okay, this is what it is, right? This is the situation, right? As I mentioned previously, like they didn't really go into much details about the majority of those situations that they presented except for the "you're beautiful for a black girl." Like that's the only thing they really specified. The others was like hint, hint, nudge, nudge. We kind of are led to believe it's police brutality or whatever, but they never really mention that, right? And I know it's like it's a commercial. I know you can't have like in a commercial like just a full on dialogue like we have a like a sitcom or a movie or something. I know that. Okay, I know that. But still, it could have been mentioned, right? It still could have been mentioned. You can at least mention it. It shouldn't be hint, hint, nudge, nudge, right? So, strike two. Strike three would be where are the white folks at? That's the thing. Sometimes when we talk about racism, we leave out the agents of racism, the people who are perpetuating racism. White people. Where were they? You notice that Procter and Gamble were really careful not to show any white people. I don't remember seeing any white people in that commercial. And if there happened to be a white person, they sure weren't portrayed as an agent of racism, right? So that's a problem right there. Because the way that this commercial made it seem is just like, it's just racism is just out there, right? As if it's just some colorless entity, some invisible colorless entity, which is not, right? So, strike three. So you're already out, Gamble. But we can keep going a little bit more, right? All right, so I got a couple of receipts on Procter and Gamble. I did a little digging, a little bit of digging. Okay, I went to the Wikipedia page, but that's the thing too. Like the receipt, like you don't even have to do that much digging on these folks. Like on their page, like all right, human rights violation, 2016. This was just last year, y'all. Come on, like this was just last year. All right, so according to a 2016 report by Amnesty International, palm oil provider Wilmar International, the world's biggest palm oil grower in 2016 and supplier of raw materials to Procter and Gamble, profited from 8 to 14-year-old child labor and forced labor. Some workers were extorted, threatened, or not paid for work. Some workers also suffered severe injuries from toxic banned chemicals. So basically, Procter and Gamble are doing business with a company, right? A company that uses child labor, uses forced labor as well. Basically slavery. Forced labor. I mean, some workers were extorted, threatened, or not paid for their work. And these are kids too. Like, these there probably was a mixture of kids and adults, probably, but 8 to 14-year-old kids being forced to work, right? Anybody being forced to work, right? Procter and Gamble are doing business with these people. All right. So strike 4 right there. All right. Next strike, we're going to go back in history for a quick second. All right. Procter and Gamble was created in about around 1837, right? It was founded in Ohio, north of the Mason-Dixie line, right? So people might say, okay, this company perhaps, since it was started up north, might not have ties to slavery. But you have to remember that companies do absorb other companies over time. Like Procter and Gamble, I don't know, to be fair, I'm not quite sure of this, but I'm pretty sure if we really were to dig up in their history, we would uncover them at least absorbing companies that have had ties to slavery. And I really believe that Procter and Gamble has absorbed companies over the years that have had ties to slavery, right? Um, and also, you, I'm pretty sure they did business back then. I'm pretty sure they may have did business with companies that had ties to slavery too, right? And some people are going to be like, well, they were just a product of their time. You shouldn't hold that against them. But these are things to think about, though. Like, if you're going to really be, because they seem like they're trying to low key position themselves as sort of like an ally, perhaps. But the thing, then they're doing it in a way that sort of hints at it and would make you assume that they're trying to be an ally. But in reality, they're just hinting at it and trying to lead you to make that assumption. But I really don't think they're trying to be like straight up true allies for Black people, right? I just don't see that. I really see this as more of like ally theater, right? Playing the part of an ally, but not actually being the ally, right? Positioning yourself a certain way, maybe saying, a couple of phrases like Black Lives Matter, Also, like, it's just, it's more like, again, like ally theater. It's like they're just positioning, it's like pretend ally. Like, basically a non-practicing ally, right? What good can we do with a non-practicing ally? Like, if you are an ally, you have to, it's action. Like, ally is not just a noun, it is a verb too, right? Yeah. And I really doubt that Procter and Gamble are going to position themselves to be an ally for Black people and risk losing all that white money. Let's be real. I mean, white folks got money to spend. We do too, but white people have more money to spend. And probably when they, get down to the nitty gritty, they probably are getting more money from white people, right? But, they'll pander to us, use us, and also look at the attention, look at the publicity that this commercial has gotten too. Like, look at this, right? Just that alone, they already getting, attention and like, way more if they had just did a quote unquote regular commercial, right? And also, think about it. This is like low key predatory as fuck. Really, think about it. They're preying on us and think like, because like we've been in the media, like police brutality has been a big issue, especially like recently. I mean, it's always kind of like been there, but at least the past few years has really like risen. Like it's like in the forefront, right? And these folks, it's just looking at us almost as like, let's hop on that, movement for a quick second. Let's try to get something, see what we can get from that, right? Isn't that like ain't that just like really just predatory as fuck? You see a group of people going through a tough time. But instead of really being down for that group of people, you're just gonna come in, say, say a little words here and there, but really just manipulate the situation. Just take advantage of the situation. Just try to, just, right? Just use the situation for their own good, ultimately, right? And that's not what an ally is supposed to be, right? An ally is not supposed to be doing that. And I think we as Black people, we need to really know how to vet an ally, right? We can't just be accepting any and everybody, especially now in this particular time era that we're living in, right? We gotta really know who's down for us and who's not. As a rule of thumb, if you ain't a part of the tribe, you're an enemy. until you have proven yourself otherwise. As a rule of thumb, I think that should be a rule of thumb, right? um, Also, like a couple of questions that we could probably ask, and these questions can be directed at Procter and Gamble, but also just um, potential white allies in general, right? Like a question like, so do you believe in white privilege? That would be a good question, right? Because if they're like, oh, I don't believe in white privilege, then okay, they ain't an ally. Right then, right there, we can just scratch them off the list. They're not an ally, right? Um, because they're not going to. If you're going through or having issues with racism or racism in the media and things like that, what's the dynamic of your conversations going to be like with that person, right? Like basically, it's just you're gonna have some like really circular conversations that start off here, go here, circle, 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 bam, you're back to square one, right? These like circular conversations, right? These 360-degree conversations, right? You just go all around. You're trying to convince them that hey, racism exists, right? That's going to be pretty much the dynamic of your conversation, trying to convince this white person that racism exists, and we just don't got time for that. We can't. That's for the good white people to be doing. That's what they should be doing. Taking their people onto the side, letting them know racism exists. White privilege is a thing. It actually exists. Here's what you can do to help combat the issue and combat the problem, right? Some other questions like, how do you feel about the phrase Black Lives Matter? If they're saying all lives matter, like, oh no, all lives matter. Okay, you can scratch them off the list for that, right? Um, that's not gonna, like, if you don't understand by now what the phrase Black Lives Matter actually means, not what they want it to mean, then you ain't really listening, and we can't deal with you. We can't use you in any way, right? Another question: do you own up to having internalized anti-blackness? That's probably a bit of a wordy question. Might seem a bit complicated, a little bit. But ultimately, if they can't own up to, like, oh, I have anti-blackness, but I'm working through it, right? If they can't own up to that, again, they're not an ally. And some white people probably will think that they don't have anti-black sentiments. But the thing is, we as a community, we black people, we know we ourselves have anti-blackness, like internalized anti-blackness, right? And we are black, and we have that as a collective, at least, right? So how can we not expect white people to have internalized anti-blackness, right? So they have to be able to own up to like a lot of things, and that's one of them, you know. Another question, how do you feel about police brutality? You know, um, as it relates to black people, right? And we could probably bring up some specific cases, like say, well, Trayvon Martin is not a police brutality case, because it didn't involve the police. But that's another case to bring up too. Like how did you feel about Trayvon Martin, right? Or how did you feel about Philando Castile and his perpetrator getting off? Like these are questions that we have to ask when vetting an ally, if we want to vet an ally, of course, right? And I think, and of course, there's other questions that we can ask as well. But these are just some that just popped into my mind, right? You know, if anything, if you ask just one question about white privilege, right? You know, if they can't even admit to that, then we can't do anything. We can't be down like peace, Um, Another thing that I want to mention about this commercial, notice like the theme of almost kind of like, oh, you just have to accept racism to an extent, it's like low key though. But if you really listen to the commercial and the dialogue in the commercial, it does kind of seem like that's what they're hinting at. Like, you know, nothing I can do about that. You know, you're not going to let that word affect you. You know, you have to be twice as good. You know, you had the same opportunity, but you got to be twice as good. You know, um, it's not fair, right? It's you look at if you don't just look back at the commercial, right? That really seems to be the like an underlying theme, like you almost like you have to accept it, almost, or you should just accept it. Like they didn't really show the black people in like kind of like a more active role, right? Like in a position of power, or at least in a position of trying to get to a position of power, right? It showed us more so as like passive a little bit. And they had the black moms up in there, and no shader to the black moms. The black moms definitely hold down the community, but we do need, they should have shown the black dads too, as I mentioned already. They like that again, like especially when it came to like the police brutality stuff. Like I can understand the beautiful for a black girl thing, all right. But then there was like a mom talking with her daughter in the car about police pulling her over, and I kind of feel like that probably would be more better for like a male, like a black dad and his black son to talk about, like, and then there was another scene where a black mom and her black son, they were like at the dinner table, and she was telling him don't forget his ID. I think that would have been better with a black dad and a black son, right? So, for me, I really just don't buy Procter and Gamble's like shtick that they're trying to sell. I really just think it's Allied Theater. Honestly, it's just them kind of like pretending to be an ally. Not really actually being an ally, right? Cause like what? Like we look at all these cases that these police brutality things. Like they could have like tweeted out Black Lives Matter. I don't think they did, but they could have, like, at least. I don't even think they did that. Like that's the thing. Like we gotta really look at these people like, they receipts, right? Like we gotta really look and do a little research, right? When's the last time Procter and Gamble tweeted Black Lives Matter, right? When's the last time Procter and Gamble went on record and disagreed with something that negatively affected the black population, right? It's like, come on, Procter and Gamble, P&G, come on, like, it's just like I said, it's like really when you think about it, it really is like predatory as fuck for them to do something like this. It's like low key predatory if you think about it, because they didn't really have to do this, But I'm like, if you're gonna do this, then really do this, though, because they could have really went in on this commercial and really let the agents of racism, right? White folks, these cave dogs, right? These cave beasts up in here, these cave trolls, and let them really know what's up, right? And also, like, I'm like looking at the comment section of the YouTube video, and I'm like, of course, there's white tears in the YouTube comment section of the video, right? But I'm like, what y'all mad about? Like, they didn't really even mention you guys in the commercial, though. They didn't show any as far as I remember, really show any white people being racist, which they should have shown, right? Because racism is not just some invisible entity. Like, it has a face, you know. They may not want to admit to it, but it has a face, you know. Like, you know, these people in this comment section, you know, and the thumbs down and the thumbs up for the video are almost equal. It has a little more thumbs up than thumbs down, but not by much, though. Not by much. It's almost 50-50. You know, almost 50-50. You know, it has about 4,700 thumbs up and about 4,000 thumbs down. You know, but also just in the comment section alone, like, you can just really see the mentality of these people. You know, these cave beasts, cave dogs, cave dwellers, cave, you know, just acting like they just crawl right out of the cave. I guess they probably did, though. You know, no good, right? And that's the thing. Even in the commercial, we not even in the commercial. No one really even came at you like that, though. That's the thing. No one even really came, because let me direct this commercial. Let me do my director's cut of this commercial. Let's get the same cast. We can get the same cast. We can add a couple of black dads to the cast as well. Let me direct this commercial and show you what it's supposed to be. Did black people have anything to do with this commercial? You know, other than the actors, of course, we had to have them. But, you know, was there like a black person writing the script, black person directing, you know, etc. Right? Like, really involved in the creative process of this commercial. That's something else to think about too, right? Because you know, think about it like, oh, that was a white person who wrote the script. Oh, a white person directed it. Oh, you know, it's like, you know, it's something to think about. And also, in the future, like, keep tabs on Procter and Gamble in the future when things that affect us in the media comes up, and see how they respond to it, if there's a response at all. Also, see how Procter and Gamble moves forward in the future. Is this the only commercial that they're going to do about this topic? Probably, you know, but think about that too, right? Like, they're just going to do this commercial and that's it, you know? Like, oh, we got what we wanted, we out. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with this video. If you got to the end of this video, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you were able to get something out of this video. You know, I haven't actually watched other people's video on this topic yet, just because I kind of wanted to make sure, like, just give my personal take without other influences. But perhaps I should have watched it just to get some ideas and some other things to talk about in this video, you know. But yeah, I guess that was some random stuff. I'm not like some random stuff I probably should have just kept behind the scenes. But what do you think about the commercial? You know, and you, as in us, like black folks, if you ain't black, I really, also, if you ain't black and you don't, if you look, I want black folks' opinion. All right, you know. Perhaps if you're brown, you know, you can leave your opinion too. But, you know. So yeah, what are you guys' opinions? How do you feel about this commercial? Did you enjoy it? Did you dislike it? Were you indifferent to it? You know, let me know. You know, thank you very much for watching. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.